All right, who have we got, Mike? We got Michael. Michael Walsh. I know Michael Walsh is a guy who hangs out in bars that I'm sometimes in. I give him a couple of bucks, maybe buy him a drink. But it turns out, who knew that he is an award-winning journalist, screenwriter, and author. In addition to writing a hit Disney movie, he is a former classical news critic and foreign correspondent for Time magazine. He's won the ASCAP Deems Taylor Award for Distinguished Music Criticism and the American Book Awards Prize for Fiction for his gangster novel and All the Saints. And now that I know that he's done all this stuff, I'm never buying him a drink again. His latest book is The Fiery Angel: Art, Culture, Sex, Politics, and the Struggle of the Soul for the West. And it says here on the sheet that it is out today. Is that correct?
That is correct, Drew. Yes.
Hey, how you doing, buddy? It's good to hear you.
Yes, good to hear you, too. Thanks for having me on.
It is a pleasure. So we're going to talk about your book, The Fiery Angel, but I want to talk first about some politics, all right?
Sure.
You were an early Trump adopter and a fierce Trump adopter, far earlier than me, and I think you deserve, cheers because the guy's doing a great job. So I'd like to hear how you feel about where Trump is now, what he's doing right, and what you think he's not doing right.
Okay, well, I was on Fox and Friends actually a week ago to talk about a column I wrote in the New York Post about how if the Trump administration is chaotic, let's have more chaos because obviously it's working. And just a few days ago, I was on Irish radio in my adopted country of Ireland, and they were saying, well, the Korea summit is off, and Trump just walked away from it. And I said, give him 5 minutes, and Korea will be back. And sure enough, it is, because they haven't read The Art of the Deal. They didn't live in New York. I lived in New York all during the sort of first Trump era in the 80s, so I got plenty of exposure to him. And what he's doing is no different from what he's always done. He plays the media like a fiddle, and he puts his last, best, and final offer on the table first. And then if you don't like it, he walks away. And then you chase him down the hall like Madeleine Albright chasing after Kim's father in North Korea. I mean, it's a funny spectacle, but it seems to be working fine. And I would, other than the fact that he churns a lot, which the media thinks is terrible, but I think is fine, I don't have any even grounds for criticism for what he's doing. You may not like him as a person, and who does, but you got to like him as a president. That's the point. That
is the way I feel right now. The press, as far as I can see, is utterly disgracing itself. I mean, in ways that are kind of beyond. It disgraced itself. The press disgraced itself during the Obama years by not covering the things that Obama was doing, the IRS scandal, the Fast and Furious scandal, all the stuff that he was doing that was really bad. They just kind of turned a blind eye. But this,
you mean like Benghazi? Yeah, I think there was a little Benghazi thing
a little
too
Benghazi
there.
going on. A lot of and I heard they've been spying on the Trump campaign, but we're not allowed to call him a spy. But do you see any chance? I mean, is it too naive? It probably is, but is it too naive to think that there's some chance that these guys are going to look in the mirror and say maybe we should clean up our act a little bit? We're not as bad as Trump says, but no, it's not going to.
No, I've been in this business since 1972, and I know a lot of the guys at the top of the media food chain. They're all superannuating baby boomers like myself. So we all started at the same time. We cut our teeth watching the Watergate coverage in 72, 73, 74, as that was all developing. And they will never go back on their core principles, which is to despise conservatism, America as founded, and Trump as the embodiment of that. They just won't do it. They'll go down with the ship.
They'll go down. So, last question about this, and then we'll get to your book, The Fiery Angel. But do you see any, when you talk about the fact that you don't like Trump, and Trump is he's a hard guy to like. I mean, I wouldn't leave him alone in a room with my daughter. He's, he is a strange guy. Do you see any disadvantage of that? This is the thing we hear from the Never Trumpers and the former Never Trumpers, that we are making excuses for behavior so that we won't be able to criticize the left for this behavior anymore.
Oh, that's the stupidest argument of all time. I mean, honest to God, grow up, people. And I'm talking to Ben Shapiro and Eric Erickson and David French and whoever else has been peddling this since the day Trump got elected. This isn't a morality contest. We are not electing the Pope. We are not electing the Pope. We just elected the Roman Emperor to sort things out. These people have got to get over themselves. I frankly find that argument incredibly offensive and very juvenile.
Wow. Okay. All right. And we're not allowed to
criticize. Yeah, I do. I'm sorry. But no. You know how I feel about this, Drew.
Yeah. I know. We're not allowed to criticize Ben Shapiro. He's paying for the phone line. So we no. Oh. And I actually love Ben, so I will object. But here, let's talk about the fiery angel. I read your last book, and I've only started this one, and you are launching a deep defense of Western culture per se. Is that fair to say?
Yes, that's absolutely true. It's a crusade, and I decided to use the word crusade. I am a proud, if honorary, graduate of St. Louis High School in Honolulu, Hawaii, class of '67, and we are and remain the Crusaders. So crusade is good enough for me.
So, give me a sense. Give me the short version of what it is about Western culture that you find unique.
Well, let me put it this way, Drew. I grew up in a military family. I moved every 2 or 3 years. So I'm in large respects an autodidact, which is, both a strength and an egregious failing, which means I had to come to culture myself. Luckily, I was a talented pianist and musician, so I won a scholarship to Eastman and the Eastman School of Music, where I practiced, learned the piano and the musical trade. But I had to come to culture on my own. And to see it now being stripped away from us after working all my life to master it insofar as I have, I take that personally too. So this crusade is partly a rebellion against the trashing of everything that people of our generation, and I know you're 30, 40 years younger than me, but I just use that to make you feel like you're part of this conversation.
Thanks.
That we grew up believing to be true. And furthermore, it is true. Furthermore, the Western civilization is the best thing that ever happened to planet Earth. And to see it now denigrated and demeaned and called racist and all these Marxist isms is just intolerable. So I wrote Devil's Pleasure Palace in 2015. It turned out to be a surprise hit. And so Roger Kimball, who was a mutual friend of ours, commissioned the second book, which is The Fiery Angel, which is out today. And this one is more prescriptive. It's less an analysis of the cultural Marxist revolution that is tearing down Western society, and more of a, here's how you fight back. You have to know these works of art because, as I like to say, there's more wisdom in Homer than in the Kennedy School of Government about our political situation.
I mean, that is certainly true. I have a very similar background in the sense of having come to culture on my own. I mean, even though I went to college, I didn't get anything out of college except the books, which I then proceeded to read. And I had the exact same experience of thinking, oh Lord, this is really the pinnacle of human life. It's the pinnacle of human achievement. But there's a very distinct religious fervor. I mean, you use the word crusader jokingly, but at the same time, you talk about the fiery angel. You talk about you talk about culture as if it were conveying a deeply religious meaning. Isn't that fair to say?
Yes, it's absolutely. Excuse me. It's absolutely fair to say. And in The Fiery Angel, I went into a lot of religious stuff. Now, I know you're a convert to Christianity. You wrote that wonderful book called The Great Good Thing, which, by the way, I recommend to everybody to read.
Thank you.
No, it's just spectacular. But I'm a cradle Catholic, so I also grew up in that environment, and I've thought about this whole notion of God and man and where are we going and all that sort of stuff from both a religious and an artistic point of view. But the point I want to make is that the basic thrust of Western civilization, I believe, is the heroic narrative. We're all the heroes of our own movie. We're not cogs in a machine. We're not just ants in the anthill. We're individuals with our own story. And that is the basis of Western religion, certainly the basis of Judaism and Christianity. But it comes even before there was Western religion, is my point, that it's something so deeply buried in the human psyche that I think it's a plant from God. So reversing ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny, I like to say. Phylogeny recapitulates ontogeny, and there's a sentence you can't wrap your tongue around 3 times in a row.
It actually is. It's a wonderful point, and I noticed it in The Fiery Angel, that so many of the things that are conducted to us through Christianity were in the classical world. I mean, I frequently think of Plato and Aristotle as the Goyish prophets, that they were they were prophets before we had Jewish prophets, or at the same time we had Jewish prophets, and really informed a lot of the Christian culture that finally came to us. And including the Romans' multiculturalism, the allowing people in. Now, you talk about being prescriptive. Mm-hmm. What is it that you want people to do? What is the call to action here?
Well, I want them to get out and read a book, for God's sake. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing I want them to do. And I want them to start with Homer and Aristotle, which are great places to start. But I also want them to understand that Western civilization isn't just sitting in the opera house, a place I've spent many, many happy hours of my life in professional and personal capacity. But it's also understanding, for example, there's a chapter on Beauty and the Beast. And we all know the fairy tale, and some of us read it in the Andrew Lang Blue Fairy book, and many of us saw the Disney version of it. But it has so much deeper resonance than just the cartoon or just what we think we know about it. So read that and then understand what it's actually trying to tell us. I also spent some time in this book, this is the X-rated part of the book, with the Arabian Nights, the 1001 Arabian Nights, as translated unexpurgatedly by Sir Richard Burton. And you will be stunned. Have you ever tried this? Pick up the Arabian Nights at random, and you will find pornography on every page. The sexual dysfunction of the Muslim culture is so spectacularly revealed in the pages of what you think of as Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves. It's just amazing. So I picked 3 passages almost at random to show you why Islam has such difficulty integrating with the West, because our notions of the equality of the sexes are very Christian and come from Aristotle and Aquinas to us. But Islam rejected that, even though it translated Aristotle. It didn't learn the lessons of Aristotle. And it's one of the reasons these two cultures are so antithetical.
It is. I love the 1001 Nights, but the whole story is a woman telling stories to keep from getting killed because the guy kills his wife every night. So
she breaks off right at the good part every night.
Every night to keep him going. That's right. Yeah.
Right.
So is there anything, you talk about the culture coming under assault, but is there anything going on that you like? There are things that, aside from going back to the old operas and the old plays, anything on TV that you're seeing that you enjoy?
Well, I think there's a connection. What I'm trying to get at here is that there's a through line from all of these stories. I mean, there's only, a handful of plots, and Aristotle lays them out in the Poetics, especially the movie structure plot, beginning, middle, and end, reversals of fortune. Everything we know as screenwriters drew is in Aristotle. So what I want people to do is, look at Breaking Bad, for God's sake. It's like a 5-year Shakespearean tragedy, right? Charting the downfall of a good man who turns evil. And I'm watching The Walking Dead. At this point, I don't know why, except that I feel like one of the zombies, and I'm waiting for someone to put me out of my misery. But we sort of admire the plucky band of heroes staving off this seething mass of pod people. And I think these things resonate throughout our culture, and even in the golden age of television, which we're living through now, we have great writers working on it. We have great stories, and they're the same stories. They're just clothed in different, zombie costumes. That's all.
So reading the old stuff actually informs your enjoyment of the new stuff. I mean, that makes perfect sense.
This is something that, if I lived almost half my life in Europe, so I spend a lot of time there. And you go into the art galleries and you see St. Jerome, and we see St. Catherine, and you see whatever in the paintings of the Renaissance and Middle Ages. And if you don't understand the Bible, you don't understand anything about what you're looking at in those pictures. And therefore, you don't understand when those characters come back, as they do constantly, in contemporary fiction. These are archetypes, and we now have been cut off from our culture, deliberately, I would argue, and do argue, so to make us culturally illiterate in our own world, and then we can be taught to hate it. And that's what's going on right now.
Michael Walsh, the author of The Fiery Angel, Art, Culture, Sex, Politics, and the Struggle for the Soul of the West. Michael, it's good talking to you. I don't see you enough. I hope to see you soon.
Oh, I'll be back in L.A. sooner than you think.
The drinks are on you.
So,
Thanks
so
a lot.
I'm looking forward to that drink, by the way.
All right, we'll do it. Thanks.
Okay, anytime.
All right. It is nice to talk to him. I used to bump into him all the time, and now I don't see him that much.